federal government has concluded plans to launch and deploy compressed natural gas CNG vehicles for mass transit starting this May as part of activities marking President Bola Tinubu's 1 year in office. Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, disclosed this in a statement yesterday. Ononuga said while considering buses and tricycles in addition, the government targeted about 1 million automobiles by 2027. He said the committee led by Michael Oluwagbemi was set to deliver cheaper, safer and more climate-friendly energy vehicles. Ononuga said the committee had fulfilled some foundational reforms to enable the new CNG and electric vehicles deliver the future Tinubu promised. He added that all was ready for delivery of the first set of critical assets for deployment and launch of the vehicles ahead of the first anniversary of the Tinubu administration on May 29. All right. You've often talked about conversion and CNG cars, vehicles, safer energy, cleaner, cheaper. Your take on this? Good news?
So for me, it's good news, but it's mixed news for me. President Tinubu announced a raft of measures, including CNG buses, to be able to cushion the effect of subsidy removal.
Yes. That
was last year. Why are we doing this in gearing up for the 1 year anniversary? This ought to have been done last year. We ought to have started a timeline for implementation and adoption of CNG. I drive a CNG car, but to get CNG in filling station is headache because we've not done a lot of work as regards adoption. I thought the buses will have been deployed since last year. Now they are telling us that Jets, Brilliant Motors, and a couple of other automobile companies will do a good job at they're already bringing in those knockdown parts, and those parts will be assembled together to form a CNG car. I mean, I'm quite passionate about the likes of Jets. I know the work Jet Motor and Chidi Aguirre has done. But I would have thought that this should have been implemented last year once it was announced. So you now telling us that this is looking forward to the first year anniversary of another daddy Oyoyo and saying, oh, he's done CNG 1 year on, I'm at sea. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought some of these buses were deployed. I thought that we heard that even some states have started getting the CNG buses. So why do we have to wait this long? Also, other things they said there's going to be a CNG, sort of like an app, where we can download our phone to be able to know the CNG stations, where we can get that. That's good. I'm happy about that. But I think it's the adoption. You can go around VI. How many stations have CNG gas? I mean, you can tell me. I own a CNG car. To get CNG gas is a problem. So how can we deepen the adoption? And also, are we carrying the stakeholders along? How much are we going to do that? They're talking about the AKK pipeline that once it comes to the stream, that's also going to help you get gas. We need to be able to sustain this. It's a good one, but it's late. Because if this was supposed to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal, then we failed on this. But it's a good one. I'm happy this is starting, but it's late. If it was announced last year, why did we start last year?
All right.
Okay, I mean, this is a report based on a statement by Mr. Bayo Ononuga, Special Advisor on Information and Strategy to President Bola Tinubu. And he's saying that, look, they promised to provide CNG buses, that they are ready, the committee is ready, and that this will be part of the celebrations of the first year in office of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, this celebration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 1 year in office is significant to the extent that many critics who will have otherwise been very harsh with the administration have told us before now that everyone should wait till after 1 year. So what Mr. Ononuga has done simply is a build-up to that May 29th. I guess there will be a more comprehensive information provided and more comprehensive assessment by the Nigerian public. This is just what you may call a teaser. Now, to the details. Now, Mr. Ononuga says in the 2024 budget, 100 billion naira was provided out of a total of 500 billion, for CNG vehicles to be provided. to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy in May 2023. Now, under these CNG buses, these CNG vehicles, they will be rolled out. They include motorcycles, 5,500 CNG vehicles, and then CNG facilities. Secondly, he also said that the federal government is collaborating with a number of companies that will provide the necessary backup infrastructure. 3, he says, as a result of government's efforts, about quite a number of private companies have invested about $50 million in setting up, refueling points and also in conversion, getting conversion points and all of that. However, the issue that I have with the report from Mr. Ononuga is that if these vehicles are going to be rolled out to mark 1 year in office in May, by now we should see some of the evidence. Who has seen the evidence of NIPCO and BOVAS getting involved? NNPC is also mentioned as being involved in this CNG project. So if he says that, and he says Jet, Meccano, and some other companies are also involved in the project, by now, this is almost the end of April, we should see it with the evidence of our eyes. After all, in the statement by Mr. Ononuga, this will be in about 36 days. So what we're being told is it that we're still being promised that this will happen? Or this is something that has happened? Because if all of these companies are already setting up refueling stations and the conversion vehicles are already available, we should begin to see signs of it. And what we'll be seeing in May will just be, the actual ceremony. But maybe they have a secret location where they are doing this, and then at the last moment they will distribute all of this to the various parts of the country. That remains to be seen. The refueling stations will be very important. The conversion will be very important. And then where are we with the collaboration with the Road Transport Employers Association of Nigeria and the road transporters who are supposed to give full effect to this? We have been told that safety standards have been developed, both for the conversion and for the operation of these vehicles, where that is important. I like the fact that Mr. Ononuga was talking about safety standards, but I would like to see these electric charging stations, these refueling stations that we are likely to have, in due course. Finally, the government says this objective is long-term also, that by 2027, we're going to have on the streets of Nigeria up to about 1 million vehicles. And Mr. Ononuga's point about Nigeria respecting the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015 is important. Environmentally friendly vehicles on our streets. But we should move from promises to action. And Mr. Ononuga haven't put the deadline of the celebration of first year anniversary. Must know that Nigerians would like to see real evidence, not promises that these vehicles will be rolled out.
Absolutely, evidence. Now, if we were to look on the surface of things, one would imagine that it would be difficult to see how the promise will be fulfilled before May 29, 2024. What we might have would be an elaborate launch of the buses being commissioned, and then afterwards we see a lag in a proper use of these vehicles because they are not quite ready. And so those the points already established that, unfortunately, if this is a palliative or part of the palliative, which this is, to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians following the removal of fuel subsidy almost a year ago, then it's coming a bit too late. However, better late than never. A few things to consider with regards to this announcement by the spokesperson to the president. One is an opportunity for the private sector. In fact, he also mentioned in that speech, in that statement released, that the private sector had also had funded up to $50 million in terms of infrastructure to accommodate this new CNG conversion and the opportunities for vehicles in Nigeria Nigeria to transition to using gas or even both. But at the end of the day, what this is looking at is beyond it being cheaper, is also cleaner energy. And if you look around if you look at the world and climate change, today is Earth Day, by the way, we look at the fact that a lot of countries are moving away to more efficient energy sources to power their vehicles, to power industries, to power other things. Already in Nigeria, gas has been used to power for power generation. Some private arrangements have begun to use power and have seen it as a more reliable and cheaper alternative to using diesel to provide power for themselves. And so in that regard, it's worked privately. We've seen more companies, even banks, hold seminars around finance. And I think it was Stanbic IBTC who did one last week about energy and talking about the fact that they provided independent funds for those who might want to play in the energy space, seeing the opportunities that this announcement will provide for the private sector. And so what I would say is that in terms of preparation, one can begin to see what opportunities are there. Like you might rightly mention, we do not have enough gas stations to refuel if there's a need for that. NNPC, which had been going on and off as to whether to buy into or embrace fully this gas transition, are set to be on board and will also provide gas stations to refuel. So it's good news in that sense. But the truth is that we must also ensure the safety of Nigerians. And in March this year, the Standards Organization of Nigeria had released about 80 standard procedures for CNG conversion. The hope is that this committee, led by Mr. Oluwagbemi, will have the opportunity to ensure that all the stations and partners who are working to ensure the realization of this transition will adhere very closely to these standards, to the safety standards, because we know what happens when it comes to accidents involving gas. This is very pertinent to the success of this project. Finally, what Nigerians are looking forward to is a translation of this announcement to a reduction in the cost of things like food and living crisis. That is what a lot of people are looking forward to. That's what the palliative is meant for. And a lot of people have complained or looked at drawn the parallel between the increase in food prices and the cost of transportation of this food. So the important thing is, first of all, to ensure that the most critical sectors have access to these vehicles and are able to have some kind of financing to be able to afford it, so that we can see an attendant reduction in the cost of food prices and other related items. I look forward to hearing more announcements as we look forward to 1 year in office of the president. Be ready for more announcements, launches. At the end of the day, what we hope is that it will be for the good of the Nigerian people. Move on to our next story. Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy says the country has qualified for a World Bank loan of $2.25 billion. Edun disclosed this at a press conference held at the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank Group in Washington, D.C. He said the package, which was approved by the Board of Directors of the World Bank, offers a 40-year term, a 10-year moratorium, and a 1% interest rate.
Yes, on the first part, I think what I said, that there was a line of sight, and if you look at the funds that have been flowing in, that's part of it. If you look at the fact that we have qualified for the processing just this week to the Board of Directors of the World Bank of a total package of $2.25 billion of what you can call, I mean, if there's no such thing as a free lunch, but it's the closest you can get to free money. It's virtually a grant. It's for about 40 years, 10 years moratorium at about 1% interest. So that also is part of the flow that you can count. And in addition, there's a similar budgetary support, low interest funding from the African Development Bank. And clearly, there are also ongoing discussions with foreign direct investors. Some of these things take longer than you expect, but they are relatively advanced discussions on major foreign direct investment flows into the country, specific transactions with specific companies, institutions, and authorities. Debt sustainability, clearly, it is a challenge, and the answer to debt is revenue. And the first source of revenue for Nigeria as a nation is oil revenue. It is a God-given resource to be maximized in the interests of the Nigerians. And that's the first source. So it is the shortest route to increased revenue, increased foreign exchange supply. And there has been success. When Mr. President took over, the figures were roughly 1.25 million barrels a day in terms of oil production. Today, it is roughly 1.6 million barrels per day. But the determination is to improve security, improve the investment environment, such that very quickly that can still be ramped up further.
Right, Rufai, more fresh loan from the World Bank.
More fresh loan for the World Bank. I'm happy you said there's nothing as a free lunch, because that's a loan and it's on your books and you will pay for it. Even if it's 1% and it's 40-year moratorium to sweeten things up for you, you will still pay for it. The World Bank is not going to forgive you of that money. Secondly, why are we taking loans? Yes, we need loans for the economy. I mean, we can't deceive ourselves. If you check the medium-term expenditure framework, yes, definitely there's a framework there to be able to take more loans, to be able to shore up the economy. But my concern has always been, what are we doing with the loans? But my fear also is the fact that our revenue is slumping. So I'd like to challenge him what he said about crude oil revenue. We're not trying about 1.2 million barrels per day without condensate. Maybe it's plus with condensate that he's talking about 1.6, but the number is 1.2 million now. It's at March. That also means we're slumping in revenue. Government revenue is depressing. And that's my concern with, yes, we're defending the Naira, which I'm really excited about. We're using a lot of hot money to defend the Naira. We're using FPIs, foreign direct investment. But we forget that with those higher bond yields, definitely we're going to pay the interest on those bonds, which is accruing to over $1 trillion as we speak today. But on the other side, we're not making the revenue, which is the big problem. So how can we shore up the revenue? And why do we have to totally depend on crude oil? Can we look for other alternative areas quickly? Mining is another quick area where we can make revenue from. A lot of the money is being frittered away and being stolen through mining. People are doing a lot of great stealing, if I can use that word with mining.
See, that's the word.
Packing everything away. And that's so much money on the table. But we've not been able to get that in. So can we look at mining? Can we look at agriculture? Can we look at shoring up the service sector so we can get more revenue in? Because we need to make revenue. So a loan is a loan either ways. No matter how good the moratorium is, it's on your book. You're going to suffer to pay for it at some point. But we need to start making revenue. That's the problem I have with this government now. We're not making enough revenue.
Okay, the question to ask is, because if you see the reports and even the mood of Mr. Wale Edun there, or Chief, it's actually Chief Adebayo or Lawale Edun.
Happy birthday to him, by the way. Happy birthday to him.
You know, you see the mood is celebratory. And the question that any average Nigerian should ask is, why are we celebrating a loan? Because he was saying that this $2.25 billion is almost close to getting free money. It's almost close to having free lunch, because the interest of Nigeria is in having long-term interest loans at very low interest rates. In this particular case, it's an interest rate of 1%. But, you know, my own point of disagreement with him is that, look, the description of this as free lunch, may be misplaced. However, he went on further in his briefing there to say that, look, Nigeria's long-term interest is domestic resource mobilization and prudent management of public finances. And he has been very consistent in that regard, in saying, look, our objective is not about borrowing. Our objective is, resource mobilization and prudent management of finances. And I guess, we don't need to explain the meaning of that to Chief Wale Edun himself, who has been in that sector for his entire career. However, he also made the point that the government is interested in the fiscal side. Now, one of the things we've been saying, discussing the monetary side and all of that, we've always been saying there must be a proper alignment between the monetary side and the fiscal side. And it was good to see that both Wale Edun and Yemi Cardoso were together at that spring meeting, of the IMF World Bank. Both of them presenting, possibilities and achievements on both sides to build confidence in the Nigerian economy, to encourage investors, and to draw the attention of investors to possibilities. But it is important also to note that, look, we still have to do something about the oil sector. The price of Brent crude today, this morning, with the easing of tensions in the Middle East, is over $86. We can't even meet our OPEC production quota. What is anybody doing about the promise that this government will even ramp up production? But I'm sure that these are details that should be very clear to themselves. And he has talked also about private sector investment. So I think on the whole, this was a good outing for the Nigerian team at the spring meetings of the World Bank and the IMF. The other day we reviewed what Yemi Cardoso said. This morning, it is Wale Edun that we're talking about. And by the way, very happy birthday to him. I noticed that the man in charge of monetary side organized a small party for him on the occasion of his birthday on April 20. Well, Chief Wale Edun should be told that, that one is in Washington, D.C. When he comes back here, the jollof and pepper soup that they enjoyed in Washington, D.C., there are people in Abuja, there are people in Lagos, there are people in Abeokuta, where he hails from originally, waiting for him to also celebrate his birthday to him. Happy birthday, by the way.
Happy birthday. Doesn't seem like the government officials, starting from the president, are interested in jollof and pepper souping, because despite all the calls for implications, this is a very lean government, and so everyone is tightening their purses and no celebrations thus far.
You are very sure about that.
Are you sure?
You know?
At least okay, I speak for myself, and I want to assume.
Happy birthday. On this table, we'll eat your implications.
No, we are not talking about this table. But you should just know that you should. What is good for Washington, D.C. is good for Nigeria.
With due respect, speak for yourself.
All right, okay.
I'll give you his phone number. You call him.
Let me just
I'm asking for birthday implications.
I have it already.
Call him.
It's important.
I'm going to ask you for it.
It's important at times like this to have the opportunity, take the opportunity to do good for your people. So I know that a lot of people have used their birthday occasion to just help those who are perhaps less privileged. But very quickly, let me just talk about this news by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. And as has already been said, this is, yes, he's praised it as we have up to 10 to 20 years moratorium. It means that we don't have to start to pay back within that period, after which we'll then pay back, and the interest rate at that point is single digit. And that's why he said it's close to free money. But a number of considerations. What people often talk about is that we are amassing debt for our children's children to pay, and how much debt will they, come into at that time. Beyond that, when we talk about shoring up revenues on another note, we talk about Nigeria's oil production over the years, trying to shore it up, and that's fantastic. Well, side by side, the news we took firsthand, where we talked about a transition to cleaner energy, not just in Nigeria, but the rest of the world. And we must begin to talk very seriously about what the implication of that would be for us, especially as a nation that currently depends very much on oil. I'm not saying it will happen in the near future, but that's the issue. We must begin to plan for the future and see how we can begin to take diversification seriously, not just as opportunities for revenue, but also the fact that if we're moving along with the world and this call for energy transition, cleaner energy, very soon, or in the distant future, not too distant future, we'll have to begin to explore our options. So a great argument for why we must begin to look at other sources of income, aside, of course, from the fact that we cannot just depend on oil if we're going to show up revenue as a nation.